Hello there, and welcome back to the Regeneration-Z podcast, where we listen to the lived experience of the newest generation during its coming of age. I'm your host, Caleb Leman, and today we're going to be talking with Steffan Johnson. Steph and I are both in Pittsburgh Theological Seminary's summer internship program, and despite being basic strangers, I can confidently say this is one of the best conversations I've ever had. He is both a genuine kindred spirit and an incredibly articulate and inspirational person. We started off our conversation about his project on music theology and then jumped right into topics including navigating emotions in the family dynamic after the loss of his father to cancer, his experience of God and mystery, a shared critique of calling culture, and we finish up with our reflections on COVID and the national response to the murder of George Floyd. So without further ado, let's jump right into our conversation. Okay. All right, hello, Steph. My name's Caleb. I don't know if you remember much about me, but I'm in Chicago. He, him pronouns. What are the basics? Okay, so I just graduated from UIC, University of Illinois at Chicago, from the College of Business, and you know, a lot of people, when they hear that, they're like, oh, how did, and I'm going to seminary in the fall, and they're like, oh, well, how did you, that's kind of a career switch, or how did that happen? And I don't know, to be honest, I just don't really view it as a career switch. I think that, like, when I went into the College of Business, it was with the intention of, like, okay, I'm going to get a set of entrepreneurial skills or basic business framework that's going to help equip me to build any kind of institution or organization or really just, you know, just like a broad enough background and how to like design and run a sustainable institution, whether it's a nonprofit, a social entrepreneurial venture, or like a ministry. And so that's kind of where I'm at now is basically what I'm doing this summer with PTS is interviewing a bunch of Gen Z folk because I'm really interested in kind of this reconstructionist, like what is the church going to look like in the future? What might ministry look like or faith community look like, especially if it's going to remain relevant to our generation. Mm-hmm. And so in sort of just a broad way, I'm just really interested in hearing people's stories and hearing how they create meaning from their experiences, what their relationship to the divine or God is, if any at all. And I'm interviewing a lot of interns in our program. I'm also interviewing a lot of folks in my small group. I run a sustainable living small group with my sibling, Jay, that is mostly, the group itself is mostly secular. There's like some people who are spiritual or some people maybe who are theistic, but mostly agnostic. And so it'll be kind of just like this interesting mosaic of different experiences within our generation, and hopefully that will help inform some of my thinking about how the church might serve me and my community and what that might look like moving forward in terms of some kind of entrepreneurial or innovative ministry. Anyway, so thank you so much for being willing to sit down with me. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. So yeah, we can jump right in. I want to do mostly the listening, but it'll be kind of conversation also. Yes. So right off the bat, why don't you just tell me a little bit about introduce yourself, where you're at in your life right now, kind of like how you came to this internship.
Yes, I got you. My name's Steffan Johnson. I'm a rising senior. Well, you can say I'm a senior right now. Philosophy and religious studies major, English minor. Where am I at in my life right now? I have this joke that if I could write a book right now, the chapter in this book would be, can I please speak to the manager? Because I feel like this is like the most adult I've been, like my whole life. So it's getting pretty hectic, and I see like I have a control of a lot of things, and I don't have to rely on my mom for much, so that's interesting. But let's see, how did I get this internship? Last year I did an internship in Charlotte, the Gambro Social Justice internship, and that was eye-opening. I never realized how many people were like on the same page when it came to social justice in a city as big as Charlotte. Well, a city as dense as Charlotte, I should say. And so that had a pretty good outcome. I learned a lot from my mentors, a lot from the other interns, a lot from the church that I was at, and I wrote a reflection on there. Like, it was a lot of pages, like 13 pages, and it was just like experiences that I had. And my advisor, like, he's another mentor in my life, that he's on campus, and he told me that this internship would be best fit for me, because with all the experience I have, like just me growing up, then me going to Charlotte, and he was like, this would be like another step in your life, like you can just add on to the book. And here I am.
Yeah. How's it going so far? Like, have you dived in your project? What's that looking like?
Luckily I picked a project that I like interact with every day, music theology. So it's like I'm always listening to music, I'm always trying to dissect it, and I'm always trying to like see why does it matter. That's like, and speaking with Chris, he helps me with the papers, and he was like, I'm moving along pretty fast. Like, I have like all my ideas on paper. Like, now I just have to do the research and find things, but it's coming. It's pretty fun, by the way. Like, cause I get to listen to like older music that I normally don't listen to on the everyday, and I actually get like to sit down and experience like what they go through, reading articles, listening to videos, looking at different videos, how they performed, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. How do you, I mean, it's just such a big topic. How do you like focus your studies? Like, how do you decide what you're going to listen to and analyze?
So I originally started with like 3 topics, or like 3 sections, and the first section was going to be the civil rights movement. And like to begin with, the paper is titled like, it's music theology, but since we going through like all this protests and rioting and looting and whatever, the title of it is How to Protest the Musical. And so from there I introduce what is music theology, and kind of put a large responsibility on the artist by saying like, in a way they're a type of like theologians, because that's a large responsibility they have to like take what they have in their heart and their mind and put it on the track. So that I introduced that, and then everything is through the lens of Paul Tillich. Do you know what that is?
Did you say volatility or
Paul Tillich? He's a philosopher, and he broke down in a lot of his stories. He just compared like community to religion, and he kind of like brought it together. But in one of his theories, he broke down religion, culture, and art, and like all those like exist together, and they need each other to exist. Like, without one, it's just like dictatorship. Without other one, it's just like a rule book with no one that can play against it. So it's pretty cool when you think about it, because he doesn't. My whole life, you grow up thinking religion is only in the church, but it's actually not, like through the lens of him, of course. And he breaks it down and said like, religion is just your ultimate concern. Like, what motivates you in the morning to wake up? Like, why do you do what you do? What drives you? Culture is like a shared community who has that same ultimate concern. So it's kind of nice when you think of it like that, because one of the common words in our generation is culture. Like, do it for the culture, do it for this, do it for that. And with that breaking down, like, culture is like a common ultimate concern. That do it for the culture term, that phrase, is more understandable. And in art, the last of the trio, which should be the first of the trio, but art to me is just like illustrated religion. And it's illustrated religion that is interpreted by the culture. But the cool thing about art is art can go with the religion or it can go against the religion. That's pretty cool to me, and it's a lot to digest. Like, you can, I have a piece in my paper, and I was like, religion can start a march, or art can start a march, or art can like have the power to stop someone from killing themselves. And it was just seeing a lot of that. But going back to my 3 topics, the first topic is the civil rights movement. and how they use like old church hymns and how they use like simple melodies to march, and how it was easy in their head, and at the end of the day it just sounded like words, but the things that they were speaking was actually like controlling their mind, like things like "we shall overcome." Like they hear that and they truly think like, when I wake up tomorrow I'm going to overcome, or whatever task at hand. Like it was one story I read about a slave, and she was in the tobacco field, and everyone knew when she came out there that she was going to sing the song. She sang it all day, and she ended up overcoming the day. So like depending on the person, that's how the song like reacts to them. Like
Yeah, in that case it's like art as survival.
yes, exactly. And the second piece is on the do-it-yourself punk rock movement, like the garage band, how they like raised up and went against the capitalism in the industry.
I love the DIY scene in Chicago.
Yes. I really got all these ideas from especially this one, from a class that I took a couple semesters ago, and it was called music theology, and we just learned a lot about it, but due to Corona we didn't have much time to like actually dive into it. So but yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting, because I have to dive into the Bible and like look for scriptures and then insert myself, and it's going to be pretty cool when it comes to that. And the last section is I'm going to do the song from Childish Gambino, "This Is America," and somehow like intertwine like Revelation, like how everything he's saying is like showing up today. And I was going to add some type of Tupac. That probably was going to be like a fourth section, but I don't that's still kind of up in the air. So yeah, that's, and then I have to interview people. Like I'm gonna interview a couple pastors that I know, a couple music directors, and ask them like why. Like the questions I have, like why does music matters? Without music, where would we be? And how does music control the church? And then I have control. Like not control, but affect. Like how does it influence? Like not control. That was weird.
Control's fine. I was just clarifying. That's provocative. How does music, yeah, this idea of like, okay, music can institutionalize or perpetuate like current theology, or challenge and rewrite theology.
Yes, it's a lot into, and like especially when you read out, like look from the outside looking in, it's a whole different scene, and it's pretty cool to look at. I have to after that I'm going to interview some musicians. I know a couple guys that's like do-it-yourself artists, like SoundCloud rappers, and I have a singer that I grew up with. He's pretty cool, and I'm just going to ask them, do they know that they have a responsibility as artists to give to the audience or give to the culture? And hopefully that's just like, that can open up into a little more. So yeah.
Damn. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That sounds super cool. I totally relate to like an interest in music and in the church, because I think that like one of the struggles that the church is having with like connecting with our generation and in general with people nowadays, and actually transforming lives the way it was intended to, is that a lot of it has gotten very heady and like thinking based. And so to have this idea that like theology, which is normally this like, you know, old white men writing things in academic language and like a study by candlelight, it's like, no, theology is something that can be written and rewritten in song. That's bringing it back down into this more embodied, like visceral experience of God, as opposed to just a thought about God. And I think that's like rerouting Christianity back more into like where it's healthier and where it's more real. Like it's not just
more organic.
Yes, absolutely. Like you mentioned the story about the woman who, when she as a slave, she would sing the spiritual as like a form of basic survival. It's like, wow. So now we're not just talking about big ideas, we're talking about like the gospel actually being like life or death.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So that's I think really important and inspiring to think about these more embodied practices as holding weight and significance, as opposed to just viewing like academic texts or academia as
Yeah.
as the like ivory tower of thinking and expressing who God is.
Yeah, it was an eye-opening experience, and like going through the class, I was like searching back, like this really has a large effect on a lot of things we do. And I know me personally, like when I listen to music, I can, if it's just me like walking to class or me just working out, like I can actually experience what they're going through, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of fun, but then it's kind of risky, and then you get a lot of emotions twined up in certain music, so it's just fun being able to put it on paper.
Yeah. What is one song, or maybe more than one song, that has changed the way you see God?
Whew. All right, I'm a huge hip hop fan, right? Rap. Let's see. Jeez. There's one song by J. Cole called The Intro on 2014 Forest Hill Drive. And it's like probably one of the more simplest songs I've ever heard in my life. And it lets you see that in the complex world, the only thing that matters is you and your family. And the number one thing that you hear in the song is, do you want to be happy? And it's actually like the intro to the whole album. But that is that song for certain. It's either that one or it's a song by Duke Ellington called A Sentimental Mood. And it's just jazz music. But I don't know, like the raspiness in the horns, and every time I listen to it, I tell you no lie, every time I listen to it, I can create a different story in my head, and it all revolves around family. And I don't know if that's just the way like my morality is built, but every time I listen to it, it's like a 6-minute long song, and you can create a story. And it's just jazz music, like nothing but horns and piano and drums. And I don't know, it's like a different experience. And it's like, then you start sitting back and thinking too deep, and it's like, how was that invented? Like, where is these people getting these ideas, these waves that they're riding? Like, how? And then the only answer is God, because you don't have no like actual concrete evidence on how. So yeah, those two are definitely a big one.
I think that many artists, like especially like truly virtuistic artists, will express that like sort of agentless feeling when they're creating art, where it's like, oh, this is, I don't know where it's coming from. It's not coming from me. And I relate to that too. Like, you know, I'm not as musically inclined as I would like to be, unfortunately, but I love to write, and sometimes when I'm writing, I hit this flow state where the things that I'll be writing, the ideas that are coming out, like are surprising me, and not what I sat down and originally thought was going to come out. And just that process of unfolding does feel like God is revealing something, as opposed to me like crafting something of my own free will.
Yeah, I know exactly. There's times like I've pushed the paper, like the paper's due at 12, and I'm like just starting it at 9:00, and it's like I sit down, I'm like, I'm just gonna throw whatever together, and comes to find out like I've had it in me all along. I'm like, where is this coming from? And it's right, and you can find the light of it, like just me jotting down things. Like if I'm like thinking too hard and I just have to get it on paper, it's like I was not thinking about that, and it's just on the paper now. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Those are like two kind of pretty distinct experiences of God and music, is like the creation experience and the witness experience, or like listening to somebody else's art, making your own art. Tell me more about kind of how you connect family and theology.
Geez, this is family and theology. I really don't know. I mean, growing up, I grew up in a pretty decent sized family. I had, including me, it was 4 people and 4 kids. Then my mom and my dad. My mom was a pastor. My dad was a pastor. And everyone else is heavy in the church. So That's all I've known. And I've grew up in a church oriented family. I mean, in a family oriented church. So like everyone knows each other because like they literally have to wake up in the morning and see each other. So that's all I know is when it comes to theology, it's like mostly just family. And then you can open it up farther than that, and you can, like, we actually call each other brother and sister at the church that I go to. So if it's like Brother Allen, it's how you doing, Brother Allen, or Sister Joe. And I guess like now that I'm sitting back thinking about it, that's probably where the connection comes from. That like everyone is family. So
yeah. It's interesting. How would you separate religion as a common ground or vector for community development? Like this idea of like, oh, it's what religion is really just a platform for building a family or widening your family circle because it gives us this shared experience. Or would you challenge that and say, no, there's something even deeper than that, or something more to religion than just community?
I feel like at the end of the day, I feel like we get religion confused with relationships. Like at the end of the day, religion is to help us deepen our relationship with God. So that's like separate. But when we talk, religion has a huge part to do with community and culture, period. Last summer at my internship, it's kind of weird to explain, but we were at an internship and then we were assigned sites to be at. Like there was like this HIV/AIDS site, homeless site, pregnant teenager site, affordable housing, and I was in the inner city, and they were going through like gentrification and just, it was crazy. And me coming from South Carolina in a decent sized city, it was like I've never experienced anything like that. And you see for sale sign houses, and then you go to the website and see that this house is like being sold for like $25,000. Somebody buys it and they put a $250,000 house like right beside the shed, and it's like, all right, that's gentrification. And the whole community was like working against that, like trying to keep community. So in the eyes of Tillich, the religion is family. So because it's all shit. That's the common ultimate concern is just family, like stand together, stand as one. And from that, I'm telling you, that Charlotte experience shaped my life, because I never saw how well people can love like total strangers. Like I see you on the side of the street, you need help, I'm gonna help you. Like I've never experienced that, because it's not a lot of, I guess everything is so accessible in Charlotte. Where I'm from, it's like you get in the car and you go. Like you may see someone at a gas station need the help, or someone may call you, but like it's like literally if you're walking downtown in Charlotte and someone needs help, you just like turn over and help them. Like I've never seen that before. And that's nothing but family to me. Just seeing someone that needs help and going out of your way to help them, like that's the sole definition of family. And I kind of see it in my family today, so it's kind of hard to like not know anything except that. So yeah.
Wow. That was intense. That was beautiful. Yeah, I think that's right, that Jesus' ultimate challenge for us is to widen that definition of family from just my tribe to God's people, God's children, which is everybody.
Yes.
But that's so hard to do. Like for me, I live in Chicago, so before COVID, I used to take public transportation everywhere, and I also volunteer at like a community dinner for people experiencing homelessness regularly, and there I'm presented with many opportunities to engage with like the disinherited as family. Mm-hmm. And yet for me the struggle is I feel like in my mortality like a very limited amount of energy, and I feel like the scarcity of energy where I have to like be intentional about how I delegate it. So it's like, oh, I can't hold this emotional weight for these people, or like engage with these people, because it's exhausting and I'm just tired and I want to go home, or I would rather talk to my girlfriend or my friends, and that's, I think, the challenge for me, is that I feel limited by this need to like protect myself from overextending myself, because it takes so much just emotional like weight to really fully look into the eyes of like these people who've been utterly abolished from our system, and acknowledge the like reality of their suffering. To do that is just so hard. It's so hard to do that.
We had discussions every Thursday last summer, and we would just attack social justice issues, like everywhere from how to use hospitality against gentrification, all the way to like the LGBTQ movement, all the way to like mental health. And like, it was just, you had 5 college students that you can tell we were all on the same page mentally, and we had the similar like experience through life. And to have us sit down at one table for like 4 hours and talk about these and like go through Bible verses, and just, we always met with like a city official about the ongoing problems. And it was like, how could I not notice this, and how can I help? But then again, it was like, all right, this has been going on for a long time. So me being in Charlotte for 2 months, it's going to be kind of hard for me to help. And I was just like, there was times like they told us like, just close all our books and go take a nap, because you can truly, like, I use this term a lot, you can lose yourself trying to find the answers. And it was just, it's crazy. I mean, you can help when you can, but I just try to stay true to myself, because I know like I can help, but at the end of the day, like, I matter a lot, and without me I can't help. So like it's kind of hard to like break it up or divide it evenly, but it's exhausting, certainly.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is that like what Jesus did is he sort of like achieved enlightenment or whatever, to the point where it's like he as a God could ascend to heaven whenever he wanted to.
Yeah.
And yet he chose to hold the full weight of human suffering. He like willingly took on this burden that that I struggle just to take on a little bit of the burden of like my loved ones, or like to take on the burden of a stranger is an entirely new challenge, but to take on the burden of the entire world and like really feel the weight of that suffering is like mind-blowing and inspiring as an example to us. But again, it's like, I struggle personally with balance, because Jesus as a figure is not promoting balance. He's not saying like, you have to have a healthy balance between self-care and sacrifice. He's like, put yourself on the cross. In a way, in another way, he's like, I'm putting myself on the cross so you don't have to, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's harder to learn from him, I think.
Yeah,
how to know when I'm just being lazy, or when I should be pushing myself to like really bear some of that weight and really like acknowledge the humanity of people in a way that's like emotional, and then respond to that. And when it's like okay to cut myself a break and not like get beat up by my own inner critic all the time.
Yeah.
And like rest in God's grace,
I have this someone told me this like a long time ago. It was like, don't worry about what you're going through, because somebody always has it worse. And it's like, geez, I was mad that they told me that, because then I was like thinking about it for so long, and it's like, all right, I can bruise myself emotionally just for a little bit to help somebody else. And that's normally what it is most of the time, but I don't know, it's a lot. It takes a lot of listening and a lot of like biting your tongue. So.
So, all right. So let's look at these questions. See if we have anything that I think would make sense. Are there any? Do you have them up? Can you see them?
I can't see it.
Here, I'll share my screen, and I'll let you decide if there's one that you want to jump into.
Oh, the questions, yes. We can start with the first one. What has been the most challenging and surprising part of it?
Okay. So just for people who are listening, the first question is, what has been or what have been the most challenging and surprising parts about young adulthood?
Probably for me is just being independent. Like, the struggle with that is, I hate to say it, and my sister's listening, but I grew up the youngest of 4, so I'm the baby, I'm spoiled, whatever. But just being independent, that's probably the biggest one, and knowing that I don't need to check in with somebody to make something happen, because it's like I have this large infatuation with like traveling soon, like going to another country, hopefully, or just traveling, or just getting on a plane and going somewhere and staying for a couple of days and coming back. And it took me like communicating with my mom, and she was like, "You don't have to tell me where you go. Just check in with me and let me know that you're alive." And I was like, "Wait, what? Is that a thing?" And
if any other moms are listening to this right now, they're like, "Why would you ever tell your child that?"
It's like I think she know, like, either she's getting brainwashed by my other siblings and notice how much she baby me, or like it's just, I don't know, she just wants me to go out and experience life. And that's probably the biggest change.
So you feel tension between like the American individualism narrative and your like family is the like heart kind of value system.
Like, on the dot. Like it's times like I'm so used to like asking someone to do something when it's like I truly have the power to do whatever I want. Like the next decisions, like small decisions, can like really determine my life coming up soon. So it's been like a lot of sitting back and thinking and like not having impulse thoughts or impulse actions. So I think that's a huge part of becoming mature, and I think that's a huge part of me becoming like a little more wiser. It's like just sitting back and thinking before I do everything. So yeah.
So do you feel there are things about like becoming more self-sufficient or becoming more of an individual that are healthy and important, or do you think that maybe it's like okay to have a society in which we just live with our families forever? Like in India, you never move out of your mom's house. Like your wife, when you marry your wife, she moves in with you and your mom, and it's you and your mom forever.
I definitely don't think that, but I don't know. I think just being out. I think me, first of all, like the fear of the unknown. Like I don't know how, like, cause me, I have this like independent mindset. Like I don't like asking people for a lot of help, and it's like I don't want to ask someone how to become an adult, because at the end of the day, they're gonna tell me like just to do it. So I think it's just like me like going through no man's land, not knowing where to go. But and plus, like, I can honestly say this, like growing up in the African American community, like it's a lot of pride in going out and having your own. So like the faster you leave house, the faster you get your own house, the more successful you are. When in actuality, that's not true. And it's like, use your family for as long as you can, or as long as you need to, and then once you get out, everything's gonna be nice and satisfied.
Yeah, and we see the trope that millennials are like challenging that narrative and like staying in their mom's basement for longer and just in general living at home, partially because of financial reasons, I think that's the narrative that gets perpetuated, is that like, oh, millennials are just poor or lazy, and that's why they stay at home longer. But actually, I think that it is in part, at least, a challenging of this assumption that, like, what success looks like is just moving out as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because there are obvious, like, there's such obvious benefits to, like, the belonging and relationship and support of living at home. And that's real, you know? I don't know, I think the healthy balance is to live on your own but in the same city as your parents. That's what I do, and it's great. Because my mom and I garden together, and I live in the city and she lives in the suburbs, and so every week I'll go home for a day or two and just be at home with her, which makes her happy, and my little sister still lives at home, and you know, they get to see me and we get to visit, and I get to see my dad too, and then we also like work on the garden together, which is very helpful for my mom because she wants to garden but she doesn't really want to do it by herself. And
growing up, like, in my family, like, there's this pattern that as soon as someone leaves, they never come back. And I don't want that to be me. Like, I don't know what it is that they're running from or what it is that they don't want to come back to, but they have a large, like, it's a pattern, I promise, like, with especially males, just about every male, like, when they get the opportunity to leave, they go, like, to the next state, the next 2 states over, and they never come back. And it's like, I don't want to be that. Like, I want to be a familiar face, and I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to work against that generational curse. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge. That and knowing that I can, not need my mom for a lot is still kind of rough. Because it gets to the point, like, I asked her to do everything, and then it took my siblings telling me, like, you don't need her to do this for you. Of course, they were just speaking out of anger because they were jealous that she's doing things for me and not them, but I don't know. But now I feel like once I'm doing things on my own, a lot of my siblings was like, wait, you don't need help with that? And it's like, you guys told me not to get help, so now I'm doing it on my own, and it's like, all right. I don't know. It's an experience, and it's kind of fun. Like, doing things like the number one thing that I had to do recently is set up my own doctor's appointment. That was the most weird thing ever. I was like, this is all you have to do? I could have been doing this at 12 years old, and that's probably the biggest thing. I did that a couple of days ago, and I was like, wow, that was easy.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm the oldest in my family, so I have the opposite experience. I remember being in 7th grade and walking to like a Great Clips and getting my hair cut without my mom. And I remember the hairdresser was just like, thought it was so funny that the 7th grader was just strutting in and getting a haircut and paying for it, and with no parental supervision whatsoever. But I for sure see that with my youngest sibling. She like loves to get support from her parents at every turn, and me and Jay, the 2 older siblings, are just always hounding on her like, you don't need mom and dad for this, like, you can do it on your own. So it's interesting how family dynamics and like child placement, there's so much consistency there in the experience. Okay. Ooh, here's the next one. This is good. This is like so broad though. Maybe it's a little challenging. But what resources, relationships, and experiences have made you who you are? Maybe like more connecting it to a previous conversation. What things do you think have really brought you into your adulthood?
At age 13, I lost my dad to cancer. And I feel like that shaped me a lot. Because then I realized, like, I remember I just typed a paper on this recently. I was like, once I was angry and sad, I saw that the whole world was still moving on. So that's how I noticed, like, the world revolves without me or without my emotions. And then I realized, like, just to suck it up and to get through it. But, like, not to, like, dull down those emotions, but, like, know when to turn them on and know when to turn them off. So that probably was the biggest experience at a younger age. and luckily he was in my life like a lot, like every day, like a little too much. He was pretty aggravating, but but he taught me a lot of gems, and a lot of things he taught me, like I can say it to myself and run with it today. So that's probably the biggest thing. After that, everything has been pretty smooth, but I guess I have to refer back to last summer. I think the reason it was so eye-opening to me is because I was in a city as like dense as Charlotte, and I was like out on my own. Like, of course there was like other internships, but the way our housing was set up, like we just had a room to ourselves, like we were living on our own, had to go grocery shopping, and that was like my first time actually doing that with like out any guidance. So, and that was my first time Ubering like crazy. I probably spent like $700 on Uber like the whole summer. So just learning like those two probably shaped me a lot.
Yeah. Do you feel like there was, like, when your father passed away, do you feel like there was conflict between you being like, oh, clearly the universe is like done with childhood and that's not fair, like I feel like I'm still holding on? Or do you feel like you're like, okay, no, I'm ready to like let go of childhood and like grow up overnight? Like, how was your experience of like that?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I definitely didn't feel like the universe was finished with childhood, because like I feel like I always see myself as being that child. I think that's why becoming an adult is so challenging, because like I still watch cartoons like crazy. Like my family subscribed to Disney Plus, and I watch Pixar movies just about every other night.
Same. Like, I love children's animated movies. That's like what I watch exclusive. Me and my girlfriend are watching Avatar right now. It's the first time I've seen it, but yeah.
What is it's
But I don't think the universe was finished. I think I just wasn't ready to give it up, so I like hid it, in a sense. Like me and Simeon, we were talking about this. It was like we spend our whole lives making decisions to protect our like child selves. So whether that's accepting somebody new into your life because as a kid all you knew was like seeing new people and meeting strangers, or whether it was just turning yourself around and running away from situations because you don't want to hinder your child self, because as a kid growing up you had horrible acceptance problems. Like I think I didn't, in a sense, I hid it. That's truly what I did, and if you ask any of my friends, they probably say I'm like one of the most childish individuals, because I'm still a kid at heart, but just through situations like I can always have that, my dad passed, and knowing how the universe really works in the back of my head, and knowing what not to do. So yeah, I didn't get rid of it, certainly. Hopefully I never get rid of it.
Interesting. That's really beautiful that you have that intact, because you know there's a deep wisdom to the childlike mind of like true humility, and on some profound level it's true, you know. If you don't view yourself as inherently this inner child playing grown-up, then you're lying to yourself, because that's what we all are. You know, there's no difference now between playing cops and robbers as a kid and the police and protesting, except for we believe the game is real now.
Yes, exactly. That's like on the dot, spot on. It's I can find myself actually like with people who think they lost their childhood, or like they're fully adult or fully mature now. I have the most fun around them, and it's like I'm one of my closest friends. Like we're that's my brother Tim. He has this business mindset. Like he is so brainwashed by the business major. He's a business major, and he's like everything suits and tie. I'm like, bro, loosen up. No, and I go to a small school, so everyone knows it's like you don't have to dress up in suit and tie every day. Just have fun. And he can't get that through his head, but like slowly I'm changing him, like slowly. So around the most uptight people, I begin to show like my more childlike attributes. I think that's it's probably from growing up with my siblings, because there's a lot of times like when the house was quiet or we were watching like a sad movie, everyone was quiet, and I'm like, all right, I don't like this, change the TV, or just get up and start dancing, and it's like just brighten up everything. And I think even with having that mindset of like being the child inside, like you can always just laugh about the simplest things. And I don't know, a lot of my emotions normally end with laughter, and it's pretty cool to have, because it's one of the easier emotions for you to have, and it doesn't take much thinking to do it. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that for a long time, I was caught in this trap of just like taking myself too seriously and taking the world too seriously. And it was because I wasn't fully aware of how powerless I am and how like truly big God is. And it's when I got knocked on my ass pretty hard by the universe, when I realized, and it knocked on my ass and then into the arms of God's grace. Mm-hmm. It was when I was held at the moment in which I was least capable or least powerful, and then still was loved, even at the moment when I least deserved it. That's when I like had this big epiphany where I was like, oh, like, I'm not some kind of hot shot. I'm just like, just trying to do the best I can with what I have. And since then I've definitely like tried to get back in touch with some of my more like childhood tendencies. Like I used to be able to just like sit down and tell these silly stories, like bedtime stories off the cuff, that were like just so, I mean, they were so creative, but also just like full of like tropes and kind of meaningless and valueless. But I was able to, but now I can't do it anymore because I'm paralyzed by like it needing to be like weighty and significant and like and like metaphorical and symbolic in a way that's like communicating some fundamental truth. And it's like I can't do it anymore because I'm stuck in that. Yeah. I'm curious if you interpret your father's death in a way that's like part of your own story as like God's plan, or as like nothing to do with God's plan, that's just cancer. And that is a spicy question. Also, that's like a really sharp duality, and I want to acknowledge that it's not as simple as that. It's obviously more complex than that. But I'm curious if you've been able to articulate that complexity on any level.
Yes, I have. I don't know why, but just growing up and listening to like certain sermons, I know like there's always a parallel between everything in life. So I think now that I'm a little older, I just know that like you have obstacles. Like him growing up, listening to his stories and listening to like the things I have to go through growing up, it's totally different, but there's going to be like the same outcome at the end of the day. And I definitely took on I learned a lot from that situation, I can honestly say. And it's just, I don't know, I just take it and run with it. Like I know things come up. Like there's times he had to like humble himself to get chemo, and he was the type, like he's always out the house cutting grass or going to work, and he had to like respect his body enough to like after chemo go into bed and go to sleep. And he used to tell this joke like the walls in the house are closing in because he was like inside the room for so long, and he used to just go outside and sit. And there's times I used to come home from school and see him on like the back patio, and I used to look at him like, "Are you okay?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm just admiring like outside." And I found myself like when I got home after the coronavirus, I was all 3 meals of the day I was eating outside, and I could just see myself like listening to like some Billie Holiday, and like just admiring like the green leaves or the blue sky. And I'm pretty certain that all stems from him. So like I'm taking the small things in life and like, I don't know, just not taking a lot of things for granted. That's another thing I recently started living my life by, is like not taking a lot of things for granted. And I feel like that whole situation like was a story in itself. And yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing that story about him. Like the thing that I thought about immediately is like, oh, that's what we're all doing right now. Like that's what COVID is like we're all sitting in our homes like, boy, I feel claustrophobic. Let's just like eat dinner outside. And it's like, okay, but there's something fundamentally different because we all know that we're all experiencing that versus versus people like your father and also just, you know, thousands of people who are like immunodeficient or have some sickness that like prevents them from traveling or like fully living their lives. They're having the same experience that we're having of this like sudden kind of enforced quietness and stationariness, but they're doing it alone because the rest of the world is still moving on without them. Versus for us, there's a fundamental difference in how they experience it or how your father experienced it and how we're experiencing it, because it's like the whole world for us has stopped.
I definitely seen him like, this was like near the latter part of his chemo, and my mom was telling him like, you can't drive. He was like, what? Like my dad's pretty big. My dad was like 6'4", 6'5", tall, muscular guy, and my mom was like, you can't drive. And like him getting angry and just like sitting back and humbling himself was like, all right, she's probably telling me I can't drive for a reason. So that's why I like simple stories like that. Like I just learned how to accept emotions and how to work against them in a respectful way to myself. Like, cause he compromised with his anger and realized like if I drive, something bad could happen. And so I don't know, everything. Like I still reflect on stories. Like sometimes I just go in my room and sit and I'm like, all right, I remember when this happened. Like how can I connect that to what happened to me? And it's always some type of correlation, or sometimes it's not even a connection. So it's just been pretty cool. It's definitely a learning experience, and yeah, everyone in my house took it different too. That was the crazy thing about it. I thought everyone would take it the same. Like there's time I have to question myself, like, did I actually grieve? Because I got over it, like not got over it, but like I didn't take it how my sister took it, and my sister didn't take it how my brother took it. And it's just weird. It's pretty cool though to see like everyone has different mindsets. And it's crazy we have different mindsets and we grew up with like the same upbringing and we have almost probably the same morality. But I don't know.
It sounds really challenging to all be processing and grieving in different spaces, because it seems like it would be so hard to show up for each other and meet each other and support each other when you need support, but everybody needs support in a different way. But yeah, that just seems super tough.
Yeah, it was weird because we all had the common denominator of my mom. She showed zero emotions. And it got to the point, like, all the siblings got her together and, like, are you okay? She was like, yes. And I was like, what is going on right now? It was just, for her not to show, when I say zero emotions, like she was the businesswoman. Like, everything was strictly business. Like, she didn't let her emotions get entwined into everything. And I was like, how is this happening? And I think I kind of, like, me being such a young age, I just took after her. Like, I knew, like, things like this happen and you grieve eventually, but just look at everything as like, all right, something needs to be done. We got to get it done. And so that was probably the underlying effect. But she affected everyone differently. Like, I know her and my sister, they butt heads because my sister wanted to see emotions. Like, my sister needed to see emotion from her. And she didn't show it. And it's like, all right. And then my brother, on the other hand, like, he took it a little heavy. And I feel like he's dealing with it now. And he's just, my mom is there. She's not there, like, on him as hard as she should be or as she was. But she's there to just guide him. Like, to just, in a way, just, like, suck it up and get through it. Like, you have other things to do that's in the past. And it's like, certain philosophies like that is definitely getting me through a lot. So, yeah. And experience, like, I wrote about this again. Growing up, being the youngest in the house, I have this little, like, I can see life through a screen. Like, because growing up the youngest, you don't really have a say so, but growing up the youngest, you see everything. Like, and there's many times I had to keep my mouth closed to like save my brother from getting chewed out or save my sister for getting punishment. Like, and I guess I just try to see that and try to understand like why. Even as a young age, I just ask that question, like, why did they do that, or why was that the decision that they made? And just I can do that to this day, not even with my siblings, just like with everyone. And I found myself like really beating myself up when I can't understand someone, like especially like in politics. That's why I never get like deep into politics, because I don't know why, like that. Yeah. And it's just
it's like they're not even human.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. I don't know, but I tend to do it. It turned into like a little game. Like I try to understand someone. Like, why did they do that? Well, they probably was raised this way, and it's pretty fun.
It's so beautiful to hear this from you, because we have fundamental different experiences, me being the oldest child and you being the youngest child. And the things that you're saying, I see in my youngest sibling. It's like, yeah, she also is like just so observant in a way that I am not. And she remembers everything. She'll remember like a family conversation from like 6 years ago and the specific details of what we were talking about and what we ate for dinner, in ways that's like none of the rest of my family remember any of that, but she remembers it probably in part because she's just there observing, like soaking up everything. And that's a fundamental different experience from me, where I've always just been like trying to figure things out on my own, kind of. But I think it's interesting. So my and my family hasn't ever gone through like such a intense loss as like losing my father, but my mom also shows very little emotion.
Yeah.
And she's not been emotionally available. She's like super supportive when it comes to like the physical task of being a mother, in terms of like doing things like school paperwork, or like cooking for us, or making sure that our like lives are running smoothly. But she's just never been there emotionally. And that was really hard for me and my middle sibling when we were in high school, because high school's an emotional time. we didn't have anybody. We didn't have like mom to like come running back to, because we just never felt understood by her. She never validated our emotions. She always actively invalidated them, and I feel like that's pretty common for our parents' generation, for Gen Xers, is that they just seem to have a fairly negative view of emotions in general, as like being something to control. And then I see our generation in this like work of like trying to deconstruct some of that and let go of some, basically realizing like, oh, bottling up emotions or controlling emotions by suppressing them is unsustainable, and
it's not healthy.
It's not healthy. It's not the right way to do it. You have to acknowledge them and validate them, and like let them be, and then that's how you release them. And I mean, I just see that like that's the work that so many of us need to do now, is like getting back in touch with our emotions. But it does seem like younger siblings are less impacted by that. And I've heard you say, Hope, for example, is like more in touch with their emotions than Jay and I are. And I've heard you say multiple times that like you feel like you actually came out of your experience of losing your father with like a healthy ability to like feel your emotions, but also like live in a world in which you can't just always be feeling emotions.
It's been a battle. I've in a sense I controlled him to like the point where I can just like get into the restroom, close the door, and like release everything. But then I can bottle it back up, because I'm literally going back out into the world. Like I'm literally opening the door to the restroom and going back out and putting up this weird facade. But I feel like in the future, everyone would like just learn that emotions has to be expressed. If not, it's going to be dangerous, and it's probably going to end with your body protesting or rioting or some type of looting against yourself.
Absolutely. That's incredible. That's like where I want to be, because where I'm at now is I just like don't know where that release valve is. I don't know where that muscle is or how to work that. Like, I haven't like really cried since 7th grade, which is like absolutely insane. And like just very recently, I've started like crying sometimes in my dreams, and I have like a sleep disorder, so I have like a very intense dream life, and sometimes I'll like be sobbing and like just letting it go, and I'll think to myself, yes, I'm doing it, because like my 2020 resolution was to like cry, and then I'll wake up and be like, damn it, but at least it's like some progress, I think. But yeah, I want to get back in touch with that, and just, and it's also, you know, this is interesting. I'm thinking on the fly here, expressing a new thought that I haven't thought before. When you get caught in this survival mechanism of suppressing or bottling up emotions, that inhibits your ability to have empathy. Because if you can't feel your own emotions, if you can't allow yourself to feel your own emotions, you sure as hell aren't going to be able to feel other people's emotions. And I feel that too. Like my girlfriend's having a hard time right now, and I'm there to support her, and I am doing the best I can, but I also have just a really hard time getting on her level, and I want to just like be able to sit in that suffering with her, and like be able to take some of that on myself, because that loosens her load, because she really feels the weight of things in a way that I don't. And I want to be able to, to do that. So, yeah. It's tough. Hello, we're back. My roommate is playing the piano, so we have beautiful background music to half of our of our podcast here. Okay. So jumping right back in, the next two questions are on the subject of faith. So what comes to mind when you hear the word God, and how does it differ from when you were a child?
I don't know if your audio's working.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Alright, first when I hear the word God, I don't know. I guess I have to answer that like the other way around. As a kid, when I hear the word God, I tend to think of this man that had the voice of my dad, like a huge deep voice, and you have to be patient and you can hear him. But as I got older, I realized that, like, in a sense, like, we are God. Like, we're made in the image of him. Therefore, like, when I use that, I don't mean to, like, big myself, like, oh, I'm a God. Like, the things that he tells us to do, like, we have in ourselves already. We just have to make the right decision. So, when I hear the word God, I just actually think of, like, beauty. And it's like, we possess a lot of that. And one of my English courses, we were breaking down, it was I forgot what the story, it was a poem. And no, it was Augustine. He broke down actual beauty to be a glimpse of God. And, like, it's never ending. So, like, when you see, like, a beautiful landscape, it's like that small second in your mind when it's like, why is that so beautiful? That's God. And then it's going like that. And then we can just, like, it's like, he explained, like, it's effervescently, I forgot. But it's, like, never ending. It's never ending beauty. So now when I hear the term God, or I just think of, like, me and the possible, me becoming a beautiful being. Not in, like, the physical sense, but, like, in the mental and spiritual sense. Yeah. And of course, from last summer, I can keep referring back to that. That was an eye-opening experience. When I hear the word God, I can ultimately think of love. Like, just never-ending love. That's just, I don't know. As vague as that seems and broad, like, that's what it is. It's like, love is God and God is love. I've grown up knowing that, but now that I actually seen it in action, I kind of know that it's true. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's like very emblematic of the archetypal kind of spiritual journey of like, we start with this very small image of God as like old white man sky.
Exactly, yes.
And our path through life is one in which God is continually revealing themselves to us in parcels that we can understand and process and integrate into our lives, in which constantly our image of God is being challenged and then expands. And so we go through this process of the death and rebirth cycle of having to let go of the image we currently hold in order to reconstruct a bigger image that holds more of God's beauty and creation, and until eventually you just realize that God's way bigger than any image we can have.
Yes, and
we had this. It was this huge debate in one of my philosophy courses, and the question was like, "What is God?" And that was the most difficult question I could even think about, because like, once you put it into words, it's not God anymore, and it's like, you can't explain it after that. And then no one else got that, so I just like had to sit back and listen to everyone's description, and it was just weird to really.
Nobody else got that.
Yeah, no one else. And it's like, I think they were missing the point that you can't conceptualize something that's like, it's not a tangible source, so you can't put a label on it. And they couldn't get that in their head, and it's like, all right, this is not my conversation. And I have this tendency of like, if my point can't get crossed, I'm just gonna sit back and listen to your points and like try to take it in and see where you're coming from. But I was just so lost that class. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds frustrating. I grew up atheist, and I did I was frustrated by the God is too big to understand response, because it feels like a cop-out. It feels like a non-response.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Moses felt the exact same way when God said, "I am who I am." God's like, Moses is like, that's a cop-out. That's not fair. And so I do also empathize or relate to the human need to understand, and the human need to have something more than just the mystery. And and God does follow up and say, okay, I concede, I am who I am, but also I am the God of your father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Moses is like, oh, okay, of course.
Okay.
That makes total sense. And so I think that if everybody's on the same page of like God transcends human language and human understanding, then from that platform, it's still a useful conversation to try to define God, knowing that it's a futile pursuit. But I think that one of the ways in which I've come to conceive God in this very, very big way is like, God is like that which includes and transcends everything, including both like creation and the mystery, that which can be understood, plus that fundamental heart of the universe which is beyond understanding. Have you ever had a religious or spiritual experience?
Not to sound like so deep, but I feel like every experience is a spiritual experience. Like when you can, there was this thing last summer. It was we worked with a lot of teenagers and a lot of kids, and like younger kids used to come through the house and whatever. And before, like in one of our orientations, like they literally told me, in the middle of chaos, sit back and try to look at the beauty. And I was like, wow, I don't think that's possible. But now like today, I attempt to do that, and I feel like that's definitely spiritual, to like see when everything's going bad and seeing how like connected we are. Like it's no way you can tell me that Corona started in a whole different continent and now it's everywhere in the world. Even though that's so chaotic, now you can see the spirituality that everyone is like kind of connected and things can spread pretty fast. So I think just every experience that I have is pretty spiritual. So yeah.
Everything is spirituality, or like God can be seen in everywhere mindset, or is that something you've had to like grow into?
It all definitely started from the death of my dad, seriously, because I used to just see things for what it was and not for what it could be. But now just like, I don't know. I definitely think it's just sparked from there. Because now I can in a sense like live in the moment and like accept that. And not like, I have this thing, I used to want to grasp everything, like understand everything. And now I'm okay with like not doing that. I'm okay with not knowing something. And as much research as I can do and probably find the answer, like I'm okay with not knowing a lot, because therefore I have like, that's another conversation starter. Or that's like another learning experience when I get to it. But now like, if I don't need to know it, I'm okay with it. So yeah, it
Wow. Do you feel, I mean, it seems to me that a lot of this is like, comes pretty naturally or organic to you. But these lessons, I didn't, and you learned them maybe starting when you were 13. I didn't learn them until I was 21. And so for me, I feel like particularly bad at these things, and I'm just now kind of recently learning them, like how to really see God. I'm curious if you view this relationship that you have with God as something that's like pretty unique or makes you pretty special, or if that like gives you a calling, or if you kind of view it more of like, oh well, this is just my relationship with God. I'm sure a lot of other people experience the world this way too.
I'm kind of like that. Like the last one, like I'm pretty sure every experienced the world like this as well. But then again, it's like, I feel like everyone has their different experiences. So I really don't know how to, and I'm not going to say like I understood it like right then and there, but it definitely took some work. Like I admit that I'm pretty lazy. So for me to accept the fact that it's okay for something to be wrong because I don't have to do the research, I can live with that. But I just feel like everyone has their certain way, and I don't want to say it's a calling because that word is so draining. Like last summer there was like 70-year-olds going into seminary, and I was like, what is going on? Like I thought that was just something you do like right after school or when you get the urge to do it, but like 70 years old, like you're already retired. And the number one question, like our whole summer was wrapped around that question, like what is your calling? And we start like just about every other dinner discussion, every other luncheon with that question, like what is your calling? And to have a 65-year-old tell you that they don't know their calling yet, I was like, all right, so I'm not going to learn my calling until I'm like 63 years old. So with that being that, I can just sit back and chill. And I think that's just what it is. I'm just, a lot of things I like when somebody asks what I'm doing, my answer is I'm chilling, because that's all they can do. And once you realize you really can't control much in the world except you and yourself, a lot of things become like kind of irrelevant. I think that's what I'm in the middle of finding out. Like I only can control me and myself, and probably hopefully the emotions of my loved ones. But other than that, can't control many other things. So.
Wow. I really hope you know how blessed you are that you see that. Because, you know, I grew up humanist, and nowadays in America, humanism is the water we swim in, and even Christianity is humanist now, in a way that's like, we're no longer preaching the gospel, we're preaching the ego game, which is not a bad thing, but, you know, and like the secular world, it's like all about your career, like what's your career going to be? Mm-hmm. And then in the Christian world now, it's all about vocational discernment and your calling. And these things are really important and very, I don't want to bash on them, but that's not what the gospel is.
Yes.
That's not the good news. The good news is that God loves you even when you're not some superhero. Yeah. And I just hope you know how blessed you are, because I feel like a lot of people don't know that it's okay for them to set aside that weight of like being like, it's okay that I don't know what my calling is. The very notion of a calling is kind of a social construct anyways.
Back to like middle school, like in our career class, like you had to take an assessment, and then however your answer lands, that's what you have to study for the rest of the semester. It's like, no, you can't have control over these things. Like, who's to say that I'm not gonna be like a neuroscientist? I might bump into it tomorrow and fall in love with it. Like, it's just, I feel like we just, a lot, and especially in this generation, like we just try to grasp everything, and some things not graspable and some things not tangible. And I think that's the beauty in it too. Like, if you can't control something, just like literally sitting beside it and living with it. That's so fun, because then you can see how things actually work without your control. That's pretty cool. That's a fun experience.
Yeah, that's considering the lilies. That's what Jesus is talking about. It creates a culture in which we are expected to always have the answer.
Yes.
It's basically like, what's your calling? What's your calling? Everybody's initial response is, I don't know. But then by having this culture where it's like, okay, you have to come up with something. And it's no longer okay to just to not know. It's no longer okay to acknowledge the truth that we don't control our environments.
I had a older lady grill me, like she was speaking to my grandmother, and my grandma was like, yeah, that's the senior in college. And she's like, well, what you want to do with your life? I was like, I'm not too sure. And like, she gave me a 10-minute lecture. Like, she was chewing me. I was like, what is going on? Like, I just came from the gym. I was ready to get in the house, and she was grilling me because I didn't have the answer. And like, in the back of my head, I was like, why am I having this conversation right now? And I don't know. I guess older generations, they can't sit with that I don't know question. Like, they need an answer. And it's draining, but I don't know. Can't control it.
And having an answer is like a survival mechanism, and not being able to not have an answer is for sure on some level a function of privilege.
Exactly, yes.
And so that's why there's this invested interest in helping people craft some sort of forced idea of what they're going to do with their life. Yeah. So the next question is, do you have a calling? Which we just talked about. And then the next question is community. When/where have you felt a true sense of belonging? You've already touched a little bit on last summer, but maybe you can dive into maybe how belonging fit into that community.
Yeah, I have this, like, I hate to come off like this, but I have this nonchalant attitude that from the outside looking in, it look like I'm nonchalant, but I truly care about a lot of things. And I was like, just going through the summer, like, not having an effect on all the kids And I was like, yeah, I don't belong here, but I'm gonna keep like attempting to belong. And it was like a couple of guys. Like I'm pretty good when it comes to connecting with younger males, cause like at the end of the day, it's always sports, and my whole life been revolves around sports. So we had a good time just like playing basketball, and I'm like giving them like certain gems that you need to go through life, or what it's like in college, or what you have to do when something needs to be done in your household. Like just simple, putting them on like simple game. And it didn't dawn on me until when I was about to leave, like literally like a couple days before I had to leave. And I had like one of the girls, a couple of the teenagers, they were there, and they wrote a letter to me. And I was like, what is going on? Like I've never held a conversation longer than like 3 minutes with them. Like the only time I'm talking to them is telling them to stop cursing out loud. And they write me a letter like they're gonna miss me. They hope I do well in college, and I was a cool guy and this, and I'm like, what is going on? And then I realized like everyone can't be that outspoken person, because then someone's gonna butt heads. But everybody can't be too humble, because then someone's gonna get run over. And come to find out, like I was that perfect mix. And it took me like listening to the other interns, and it was like, they actually listen to you. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, when did people start listening to me? And that was my biggest sense of like, not even community, because I've been a part of like some other community that I have like a huge impact in, but like knowing that everyone has a role and you have to play it. And that probably was the biggest eye-opening for me. And knowing how well someone cared for me too, because like I said, like I have this tendency of independence. Like the only people that like truly care for me are my family. And that quickly got shut down when the word love doesn't really get passed around my house as much. It's like, in a way, it's like a paradox. For us saying that we don't love each other, like we don't actually say it, but from us not saying it, it's showing that we love each other. Like, I grew up in a house, like, we could fight like strangers. But, like, going last summer and hearing the word love, like, I love you, and, like, someone genuinely meaning it, because you know they mean it if they don't really know you. And it's like, wow. So that's what community is, and community is just love. And then, like I said like a couple minutes ago, love is God. So it's just a circle. Everything's connected. So yeah.
That's it right there. That's how you know you got your finger on the truth or on God, is when these patterns start showing themselves. Like, oh, everything's connected. You start feeling like that meme of like the guy with the, the crazy wall of all the photos and the strings attached to it. All right, well, I want to take the last 15 minutes here to dive in kind of to the elephant in the room, which is, let's talk about what the hell's going on with this country right now. Because it's a huge moment for America, and it's really scary, and I think there's a lot of fear and a lot of hope. And it's just important, I think, to process a little bit and hear from each other on kind of how we've been experiencing it and what we've been taken away from it. There's this concept that I saw in a Vice article about the cool zone, which is a period of human history where everything feels possible for better or for worse. And how we may be entering into that now. So what have you, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And what have you been learning? And with COVID and
COVID and protesting.
And protesting, yeah.
I'm going to do like a lot of repeating right now. At first I was truly scared of like the COVID outcome. And then I realized that you can't control it. So just sit face to face with it and become friends with it. And through that, I learned a lot about myself, like just staying in the house or remaining 6 feet and not talk. Like, I have this thing where when I'm in public, my mom hates when I do it, but I have my AirPods in or my earbuds and I'm walking, and 9 times out of 10, I'm not listening to music. I just don't want to hold the conversation. So now I can walk in the store keeping 6 feet and I don't have to hold the conversation because it's not going to last that long. So I think through that, you can see the beauty in just the world. How the world moves truly, but with the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement, I feel like it's just, I don't know, this is definitely the cool zone. Anything can happen. And from studying St. Augustine, to someone, this can be good, but to someone else, this can be bad. And it's no such thing as bad. It's just corrupt good. Because it's just from each end, there's something good happening, there's something bad happening. And it's just, I don't know. It's beautiful. And I don't know. I'm in the middle of it. And truly how I feel about everything that's happening, I really don't. I don't know. Like, I want to grasp it to a sense, but then I feel like if I grasp it, I'm going to have the same outcome as history. And I don't want that to happen again. And it's just beautiful. And plus, like, I don't think a lot of people notice it, but this is the perfect time to have, like, a protest. Because, let's see, I'm going to go back. You remember how I said when you close in your emotions for a while and eventually they have to come out and then you can hit the reset button? That's exactly what's happening right now. Like, you have these bigger cities that were in quarantine for months on end, and a situation like the George Floyd situation, that's just your emotions coming out. Then we're seeing that with the protest and the loot and the rioting, and eventually a reset button is going to happen. But normally when you have like an outlash of emotions, you learn from a situation. That's exactly how it is with me. When I accept my emotions when they come around, it's like, all right, I'm okay with that. I know what not to do the next time. But if it happens, I know how to deal with it. That's how it is here. Like, it's just, I think our generation is tired of history repeating itself, and we're just having an emotional breakdown, and we're going to build up back from it. And I think everything's going to end positively as well. But at the end of the day, I truly don't know. And that's beautiful in itself. Because I feel like I know everything, and for me not to know, that means something's good is about to happen. So, yeah.
Wow, that is incredibly optimistic. It's, I think that I have friends who also have this kind of ability to see the big picture or see things from a sort of detached kind of perspective, even while they're in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. But they don't come away with the conclusion that everything is beautiful. They come away with, they don't see that part of it. And, for me, it's like, yeah, I can see creation or like God's story as being like a beautiful tragedy, like Shakespeare maybe. Yeah. But it's very difficult for people, and for me and for a lot of people, to hold that with the, like, in a way in which it doesn't invalidate the, like, reality of real suffering. To create meaning from suffering in a way that doesn't placate it. And that's, like, the big critique that I hear from atheists and agnostics about just, like, theism in general and Christianity specifically is, like, how can you believe God is good, especially God is good all the time in this world? Mm-hmm. And I think that's challenging for people to see, but I don't know, that's a whole other topic. Maybe I don't want to get into that. I kind of want to hear what you have to say about that, though, because that's like I'm as an individual, I'm like totally on board with your whole, like, everything's beautiful, but most people aren't.
Yeah, that's...
So why, how would you explain it?
I don't know. I think for me to accept their flaws, and to begin with, who are me to say that they have flaws, but because they're different from me and to accept it, I think that's what, like, separates. Like, I have some of my closest friends, they're like, I don't know how you do it. And at times I don't know how I do it, but then again, it's like, I grew up in a household where if someone's different, you love them just as hard as they would if they were the same. And I think that's just how it is. And that's especially with situations. Like, if a situation is different, love it because it's a new experience. Like, I think Nipsey Hussle said it. He was like, every L in life is a lesson.
Yeah. Every new
So
experience is a
just-
chance for God to reveal some of themselves to you.
That's exactly what it is. And I think just taking bad, quote unquote, bad situations with the open heart is just, at the end of the day, is humbling. But then it's like, you can kind of live in this like hippie world, this hippie mind state that everything is going to be good, or there's nothing bad is going to happen, when it's pretty good. And I have a bad tendency, like, and I know it sounds pretty optimistic, but I'm not going to say I'm extremely optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic at all. I like to say that I'm a realist. Like, I've seen situations that should never came out on top. Situations that could have easily went south in a heartbeat. I could have ended up anywhere, from in the jail cell or in a casket, and it just ended up like I'm on top. And I think that's what it is. Like, just me knowing the outcome is me just knowing history, and the history from those situations that I came through is just, I always end up on top. So why not? If it's not broke, don't fix it. So if I'm not gonna change any way up that I'm thinking about a situation if I know what's gonna happen.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been tough for me to hold that, like, it's out of my control. I just need to sit with it and see it for what it is and be grateful kind of side of things, with the other equally important, like, I have power and I can control maybe more than I think, and I can't just sit back and not use that. And those things, like, are, you know, part of like, is part of being Christian, or being part of the human experience, is being able to hold these seeming contradictions, or these dualities together. And for me, this experience has been a huge wake up to my own power, as being like, I am not just I am not just Moses in the basket, you know, a helpless infant being like tossed around by the giant currents and invisible forces of God. That's 100% true. I am 100% that. Like, at the end of the day, I have zero power in some universal kind of God kind of way. But in a smaller, more contextual truth, there are things I can be doing right now with my time today to be anti-racist in a way that's, like, actually going to make an impact in people's lives. And so, and before this, I just viewed America as this impenetrable monolith of, like, this system that's, like, self-enforcing and immune and unchanging, and I felt very disempowered. And seeing the people respond in the last 2 weeks has been, like, this big moment of, like, wow, like, this is my country. If I don't like it, I can change it. All I got to do is join forces with my neighbors.
Yeah.
And so that's been huge for me. And I feel like this light bulb kind of went on, where it's like, I don't have to just sit and read about things. I can, like, actually do something. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm starting to notice that too, and I've never really, like, put my thumb on it recently, but that things can actually change. I think it's just growing up in this society as a black man, it's like, it is what it is. That's truly how I live life. Like, things happen. There's a saying, Marshawn Lynch, he was like, I know I'm gonna get got, so I'm gonna get mine before I get got. So that's just normal. Like, you know something bad is gonna happen, so just get all the marbles you can until something bad happens. But for the last couple of weeks, we see that, like, we are the change. Like, this culture is, I don't know, this is crazy. And it's just, I don't know. It's nice to see that everyone has the same mindset and everybody wants change. And it's truly beautiful. Like, when I see the drone shot of people protesting, it's like, wow, that's a culture. They all have the same ultimate concern and they all want change. And it's just, I'm sad that it had to come out this way or come out this brutal, and I guess things just have to happen for change. And I think that's what I truly don't know, like the fear of the unknown. And I was looking at Frozen 2 the other day, and I hate that.
That movie is woke. that is the spiciest movie to come out of big box Disney to date. That's all I'm gonna say.
I hate the fact that whole series, the first one and the second one, is like revolved around fear and how like you can't live life through fear. And then I had to sit down and actually like start writing, and I was like, fear is all we know. And like, not to say that fear is bad, not to say that fear is good, but fear is like literally what keeps us on our toes. And I was thinking back to like when people are fearful and like they have to do like some type of physical action, they have adrenaline. The adrenaline is pumping in them. Every time adrenaline is pumping, something's gonna happen positive for your body. And that's all induced through fear. And that's like, all right, we need to embrace fear, like with open arms, and good things will happen. And I think that's what it is. Like, we're fearful of the future, so we're gonna stand up for a change today. It's pretty cool. I've been doing a lot of thinking on that, so yeah.
Wow. That is a great point to end on. Thank you so much, Steph. This has been honestly one of the better conversations in my entire life. And I feel so blessed to be in contact with you and to have had this opportunity. And also just like, this is my first one, and I got a bunch of these coming up, and I didn't know how it was going to go. And honestly, if the rest of them fall completely flat, I feel like I will be fulfilled by by this one win. I don't know. You're truly a blessing on the world, and
Thank you.
I want to stay in touch solely for the purpose of just following your story, and if you wanna collaborate, all better. But yeah.
That sounds good, man. That sounds good.
And I'm sorry if you hear this all the time and it's boosting your ego. I don't mean to.
No. I like it.
But yeah, genuinely, thank you so much. Yeah, you might be interested in, I know that through this internship we got way too much Zoom activity as it is. But if you find in your heart a small space for more Zoom activity, at some point in the future, my small group that I run weekly with my sibling, we are currently talking about, I would say in depth about like how our generation can take creative agency over how we design our society, and are really researching and earnestly searching and discussing, crafting a vision for what that future might look like, of how things might come out of what I'm calling the death of the American ego, which, maybe starts with Corona, but is going to end with the collapse of the American dollar and some kind of big thing that's going to happen in our lifetime. And I think it's a lot of just people like-minded that you would very much value being engaged with, that have a lot of ideas that you would value. And for me, it's been a beautiful community because without a vision of the future, without a picture of where we can go or what things could be, there is no hope, there is no sense of power. Like, for me, before all this started happening, I felt powerless in part, not just because I didn't know, not just because I didn't think the system could change, or couldn't change, but also because even if the system could change, I really wasn't sure of a model of society that would work. Like,
Yes.
Within the constraints of reality, right? Something that's not just utopian jargon, but like actual like what would the real kingdom of God look like if we designed it? And I've recently with this community come into ideas that really fulfill that vision of like something that's like not only realistic but also achievable in a way that gives us power over our own destinies. And it's given me so much hope because now that there's a destination, I know in what direction to move, and that's like so important. So I would invite you to, if you're interested, to join in some of those conversations. Our next one is on Thursday at 7 p.m. my time, 8 p.m. your time. Take it or leave it.
How long do they last?
We usually talk for an hour and a half, but it's like not at all like this is like a very structured like recording in which you have to be here for an hour and 45 minutes, but that's much more like come if you want, come late if you want, leave early if you want, super free form.
Okay, I have work at 11 and I'll wake up to just hear what you guys have to say.
Okay.
But yeah.
So you're doing night shifts right now?
Yeah, I'm a security guard at a cannon plant.
Okay.
And it's arguably like the easiest job I've ever done for money. And I literally just sit in like the little area, the lounge, not in the lounge, like our little office area all day. And I just have to do like checkpoints. Like I get the phone and there's points around the plant that I just put the phone up against and check if the door is closed or not. And that's all I do. And I like sometimes I take people temperatures and just like write down their license plate. Like, but I only do that for like an hour, and then after that I'll have like nothing but time for myself.
Wow.
But I've been working on my driving skills because they have a golf cart, so I've been doing a lot of drifting. It's been serious. They got like loose gravel out in the back, and so I've just been drifting my life away. It's pretty
wow,
cool.
that's a lot of time to just sit and think. No wonder you're so enlightened. It all makes sense now. All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks again for setting aside this time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.